Oh, hey, it's Eric. Funny seeing you here. Now, ever since I started streaming, and to this day, the most common question I always get asked is, what school should I pick? I think this is such a common question because people often give the answer of, well, it depends on playstyle, or they all have their pros and cons, or some other vein of just inclusionary bullshit. In the real world, some are much, much better than others, especially in PvE. So today, I'm making this video to finally put to bed the age-old question and give you the facts on what school you should pick. The best PvE school straight up in Wizard101 is Death. If you're just looking for an answer, go pick Death, click off the video, it's done. Death is like being the fastest kid in the 5th grade. It's a lot like being the guy with gum after an onion convention. It's like when you get invited to a friendly poker game and you barely know the rules, but you accidentally end up running the table. So all the people there think you're some kind of like international spy or like brilliant mind kind of guy. A lot of people like to point at Death's drain spells, which heal and hit at the same time, to why it's the best for soloing, which is a very true statement. This spell type is unique to Death and super OP, allowing for much easier solo questing. But Death is also the only school that gets several of the best utility spells in the game, so it also is one of the most valuable schools in a team setting. The only con I can nitpick about Death is that its major AoEs are drain spells, which obviously have the added benefit of healing you for half the damage you deal, but have the drawback of doing less overall damage. So compared to some of the higher damage schools, it can be a slower school to quest on. Honestly, it's a no-brainer. Unless you want some playstyle centered around something really gimmicky or quirky, just pick Death and shut up, I'm begging you. Now, Storm is second on my list. Storm is the only school I might ever propose as a viable option outside of Death. Storm has the biggest number of damage in the game, which is cool because it lets you play the game really fast and quest really fast. This completes one of the major goals of every MMO player, which is ironically to play the game they pay to play for the shortest amount of time possible. But it also comes at the downside of being so weak and frail that you can actually die in the normal PvE portions of this baby game. It's kind of like being an 18-year-old fitness influencer who blasts performance-enhancing drugs. Yeah, sure, you look fucking sick and live a luxurious lifestyle, but more often than not, you end up dying before you can see the real upside of this approach. Fire is third. We're already at the point where I would never recommend any of these schools over Death or Storm, but Fire is pretty okay, I guess. It gets a solid 4 pip and 7 pip AoE. It does get damage, but less overall than Storm, so who really gives a shit?
But Zarek, what about the oddly specific scenario in Gear Setup where if I grind for 5,000 hours, I'm actually a better hitter than Storm?
And to that, I give out the very well thought out counterpoint of no one cares. The Storm's gonna hit over you. It's the way of life. Fire is a lot like being the second best chess player on a chess team that has Magnus Carlsen on it. Yeah, you might be really good at chess, but no one will ever give a shit, because you'll never be number one, and number one is just so much cooler than you. At the 4th slot, I'm going to put Balance, just because Balance is like the pinnacle of mediocrity nowadays. It's really hard to recommend, but it's also really hard to shit on. It does nothing well, it does nothing terribly either, except not having prisms, but even then it gives you spells to work around that, so it's really not a big deal. The only compliment I can give it is it just lives up to its name pretty well. It's pretty balanced, you know, in the middle of the schools, I guess, in terms of goodness. I don't know. I'm really running out of things to say. The only way I could see recommending Balance is if you really like sand for some weird fetish reason, or you're just texture. I don't know. Playing Balance is a lot like being named Patrick. All right, I'm going to put Life at 5. It has fine AoEs. It's the second lowest damage in the game. It kind of sucks. Its major gimmick is healing. The thing is, you don't need to pick Life to heal nowadays. You can heal from pretty much every school. So it's infinitely times better to pick Death and play it as a support and get all the really good support spells and also be able to heal pretty much just as well as Life. I mean, Life is bad. Don't pick Life. The only way you should pick Life is if you want to role play as a healer, like literally to the extreme specificity that you don't even care about like actually healing the most efficient way or like playing the game well. You just want to be able to cast the most healing spells, then Life is the way to go. But outside of that, no, don't pick it. So obviously last is Myth, so that only really leaves us with Ice. Ice in recent years has become the new school that KI just loves to shit on. Their stats at max level prioritize resist and health, which is just so stupid and bad for PvE. They get like 3 damage and none of their spells do any damage. They're also not tanky enough anymore compared to the other schools to be justified as an unkillable armadillo. Ice in the middle game is also somehow worse than it is in the late game. They don't get a blade till level 38. Half their spells are so hilariously bad that if you put them in the deck, you actually just immediately get banned for griefing. Like, just look at this level 81 Ice, full waterworks that I found on Reddit. Like, tell me this build isn't just begging to be stranded in Azteca because it will actually take 50 hours to complete Azteca with it. I genuinely don't believe solo that this build can generate enough damage to kill the weakest boss in Azteca. And once you finally get your 7 pip AoE, aka the only spell that matters in this game, it's so booty cheeks that it's just, this school's just bad. I mean, I guess if they buffed Frost Giant, it might be a more respectable worst option, but I mean, it's just terrible. Like, the school, it's just so far outside of the meta now. I don't even know what to say about it. Ice is actually the only school that I've always refused to quest on just because I know it's going to end up being a terrible experience and I'm going to end up hating myself more than I already do. And as is tradition at this point, last and certainly least is Myth. Myth is garbage. They don't have good well, actually they do have really good AoEs now. They have one of the better 4-pip AoEs, and Orthrus is actually the best 7-pip AoE in this game, and that's the only real spell you ever cast, but their max stats are actually really pretty damn good and well balanced. I mean, they get the 3rd most damage in the game, and paired with their AoE, I mean, they're probably the 2nd most viable hitting school in the game. And that gets paired with a lot of resistant health. Oh, but all their spells are completely wasted on gimmicky minions. But isn't every spell that's not a 7-pip AoE or blade so far out of the PvP meta that it's a gimmick? I mean, wouldn't Myth having the best 7-pip AoE make them meta? Is Myth good again?
You guys wanted the most was that one was Myth. It was
Myth PvP.
All I have to say is, Myth's cool. You're pretty alright. Hold on, you really thought I was about to say Myth is good? You really thought that? No, it's terrible. It's a completely gimmicky school. Just play death. It's really not that hard. That's why you clicked on the video. There you go. Have a great day, everyone.